Speaking of the wrong people being held accountable, there was this piece in the New York Times just a couple days ago. I helped sell the false choice of war once. It's happening again. It was from Lawrence Wilkerson. He, of course, was the number 2 to Colin Powell. Even now, 15 years later, he is still living down his complicity and the complicity of Colin Powell, a man who I think he still has a tremendous amount of regard for. Their complicity in selling a war of choice, a disastrous war of choice that we're still engaged in, that killed hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. And he's talking about the presentation that Colin Powell gave to the United Nations Security Council, where he held up a vial of talcum powder and said this could be anthrax. And supposedly this information was given to him by George Tenet, the CIA head at the time. And Wilkerson really resented it, and Colin Powell supposedly did too. And of course, we all know that Dick Cheney was intimately involved in forcing and garnering raw intelligence to back up this decision to go to war. And Donald Rumsfeld was very excited about this. We're going to get a chance to redesign the Defense Department and this cakewalk. And so, coincidentally, Patrick Ruffini, who is a Republican digital operative, I guess you would call him, consultant, one of those guys. Never Trumper, God bless his heart. He had this tweet: "My most bitter disappointment is the declining cultural cachet of Republican administrations." Now, I'm not even sure what that means, the cultural cachet. Like there was something really, I guess, like important about the last Republican administration.
They had like suits and they looked super severe and there was a lot of cachet.
Lest we forget, they're not cool anymore?
Lest we forget, this was in our lifetime, semicolon. And it's a picture of Colin Powell, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, Condoleezza Rice, George Tenet, Donald Rumsfeld, and Andy Card. All of whom could probably in some measure or another be tried on war crimes, ranging from their involvement and their unshackling of the regulations that were to prevent the torture that took place under their administration, the spying, the illegal spying on Americans that took place under their administration, the lying to the American public, the war of choice, which violated all sorts of international laws. I mean, not a one of them. Maybe Andy Card would probably get away, possibly Condoleezza Rice, although I don't think so either, frankly.
No. If you're trying her
maybe
under
Andy
the
Card.
Iraq invasion standard, no.
Right.
Do you wait? Was Andy Card the one who said that they started hyping the Iraq intelligence in the fall because you don't launch a new product in summer? Or was that somebody else?
I think it might have been Andy Card.
I think that was Andy Card.
And then Charles Hoskins came back with, you know why this is happening? Because all the people in this photo have been repeatedly denounced as fascists and war criminals by the left, which I just did, incidentally. If you caricature your opponents as the moral equivalent of fascism long enough, eventually you get the real thing. Well, first off, that's not true. That's not how fascists come about. It's not because we called George Bush fascist that people were like, well, then we're going to get fascist. Because if that was the case, our next president would have been Bernie Sanders.
I don't think you ever studied
right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, because they kept calling Obama a socialist. But to be fair, I don't think you studied the Weimar period very much, where everybody was just like, you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi. And then they were like, fine.
Actually, I do know why this is happening, because those people in that photo were not held to account for the crimes that they committed, for the lies that they committed. And because Barack Obama wanted to turn the page. And so standards and norms were dropped. That's why. That's what those people in that photo represent. The ability for the elite in this country to get away with the worst of the worst. So,
standards and norms.
Standards and norms.
This is Beanbag.
It's Beanbag, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, that's so good.